Good morning, guys. Today we're going to talk about factoring quadratic expressions. So your objective is to factor quadratic expressions. Factoring quadratics is one way to rewrite them, and so we will be going from standard form to the factored form. We will also learn that the factored form will show us some key characteristics of the graph when we do graphing quadratic expressions or quadratic equations. Okay. All right, so let's look at our first example. So we're going to factor the following expression. 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. Okay. So 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. So we want to factor this. And so what we know is it's going to be equal to a set of binomials, because this is what we did the reverse of yesterday. So yesterday we multiplied two binomials and got the standard form of the quadratic. Today we're going to take the standard form and go in the reverse direction and get the factored form. All right, I'm going to use what is called the X method. This is what the Algebra 1 teachers here at Alcorn Central use when they teach you how to factor, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to always check to make sure there's not a greatest common factor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at each of my terms and make sure there's not a number other than 1 or a variable that will divide into every term in this expression. Okay, so I have a 2, a -5, and a -3. The only number that they have in common as a common factor is 1. So there's not a greatest common factor other than 1 for the numbers. And then I'm going to look at the variables. So I have an x squared, an x, and then there's no x on the last term. So there's not a greatest common factor for the variables either. So therefore, there's not a greatest common factor that needs to be multiplied or factored out. All right. The second thing that you're going to do is you're going to multiply a and c, and that's from the standard form ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, it has to be in this form in order to factor, so that way you're not mixing up your pieces. So always make sure your equation's in standard form. All right, so we're going to multiply a and c. So in this case, a is 2, c is -3. So 2 times -3 is -6. That goes in the top of an x. I'm going to make a big giant X right here on my paper. If you completed the X Games practice assignment that I left for you yesterday, in addition to your rewriting practice, this process will look a little familiar once I get it set up. Okay. All right. The third step is we're going to put B in the bottom of the X. So place B in the bottom. All right, so in this case, B is -5, so -5 goes in the bottom of the X. All right, so I have this X set up with -6 in the top, -5 in the bottom. And just like the X Games, I want to find factors that multiply to -6, but add to -5. Okay, so that's step 4. So find factors of a times c, which is the -6 in this example, that add to b, which is -5. Right? So when I go to do this, I tend to make a little table. So I'm looking for factors of -6 that add to -5. Right, so I'm just going to list my factors of -6. So I have 1 and 6. One of those needs to be negative. 2 and -3. That is all of them. So notice that I made the 6 and the 3 negative. So in order for something to add to be a negative number, my larger number has to be negative. Okay, so that is how I choose. You could list -1 and +6, -2 and +3, because that is technically all of the factors of -6 that when you multiply will get you -6, okay? So then you just want to check to see what they add to. So 1 plus -6 is -5. Hey, look, that's the number I'm looking for, so I'm done. Okay, and so I know those are my factors. You're going to place those in your x. They're going to go here, 1 and -6. Okay, so I've completed the x, which is all you had to do when you did the X Games practice on Delta Math yesterday. However, that doesn't completely get me my answer. So what I've got to do is I've got to take into account the fact that I multiplied these two things. So I multiplied A and C. And so I have to bring that A value back out. I have to divide it back out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by A. Let me write my step 5. So I'm going to divide the results from part 4, from step 4, by the A value. Okay, so when I do that, what I get, my battery's low. All right, when I do that, I'm going to divide by A. So in this case, A is 2, so I'm going to divide that by 2, and I'm going to divide that by 2. You're going to simplify. So that equals -3. That stays as 1/2. Okay, so I'm running out of room over here. Let me move my table. So I'm going to move this table over out of the way. All right, so I have this 1/2 and I have this -3. Those are going to tell me my factors. The key is you can never leave anything in fraction form. So I have x plus 1/2 and x minus 3. I never want to leave this as a fraction. So what I want to do is I want to bring it up, because I know that my A value has to be 2. If I were to remultiply this, I'm going to get an A value of 1. Okay, so this 2 has to come back up here. And so I get 2x plus 1 times x minus 3. Okay, and that's my factored form. Okay, whoops. Hang on, guys. Sorry about this. I've swiped a little too hard. Okay, so we can check that by multiplying that back out. All right, so if I distribute, I get 2x squared minus 6x plus 1x minus 3. So I get 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. Hopefully that's my original equation. So if I scroll back up, I see that, yes, that is indeed my original equation. And so it worked. So what we know is that we know 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. Its factored form is 2x plus 1, x minus 3. Okay. All right, so I know that's a little bit to digest, and it's been a while since you've probably used factoring. So we're going to go through a couple of examples before I turn you loose to kind of practice on your own. All right, so let's look at another one. So example 2, we're going to factor 3x squared plus 10x minus 8. Okay. All right, I'm going to identify A, B, and C. So A is 3, B is 10, C is negative 8. All right, so remember the first step is to multiply A times C. So 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. So I'm going to put that in the top of this big X. And then I want to put that B value, which is 10, at the bottom. Right. So I'm looking for factors of negative 24 that add to be 10. So let's look at our factors of 24. So I've got 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. Okay. Now, keep in mind that the product, or what I multiplied to get, is a negative number. That means at least one of my values is negative for each factor list. And so I'm going to look at what I'm adding to. So I'm adding to 10. It's positive. So if I know that one of them is negative, and my sum is positive, then my smaller number is negative. So I'm going to go down my smaller column and write them as negative. So then I'm just going to then add them. So negative 1 and positive 24 is 23. That doesn't get me what I need. Right. Negative 2 and positive 12 is positive 10. That works. But I bet some of you thought the 6 and 4 would work. So if we look at the rest of these sums, that one's going to be 5, and then the 6 and 4 is going to actually be 2. Okay? So just be very careful with your signs. And noticing that since my product was negative, my sum is positive, my smaller number in my product or my factor pair has to be the negative value. Okay, so I have negative 2 and 12, so those are going to go in the sides of the X. And then the last step is to divide by A. So we're going to divide both sides of that by 3. And simplify. So negative 2/3 doesn't simplify. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Right? So when I bring those down, I get x minus 2/3 and x plus 4. And then I just have to remember that I can never leave that in the bottom, so it has to come up. And so I get 3x minus 2, x plus 4. Okay, and that's your factored form. Okay. Hopefully by now it's all starting to come back, and if I were in class with you, I would be serenading you with, it's all coming back to me now, okay? But I will spare you that today. Let's look at a couple more examples. Let's do 1 or 2 more together, and then I'm just going to leave you to practice, all right? Okay. All right, I think at this point it would be a good idea to pause the video and give yourself a chance to see how far you can get, even if you can't get all the way through yet. And so go ahead and pause the video. All All right, so if you worked that one out, 2 times negative 15, which is your A and your C, is negative 30. So you want factors of negative 30 that add to negative 7. Let's see. 1 and 30, 2, 15, 3, and 10. Okay. My larger number is going to be negative. So let's see, negative 29, negative 13, negative 7. So it's 3 and 10. 3 and negative 10, actually. And my A value is 2, so I'm going to divide by 2. So that's going to give me 2x plus 3 and x minus 5 are going to be your factors for that one. All right. Let's do one more, and then I'm going to let you guys do some practice. So 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. Go ahead and pause the video and try that one. All right. Hopefully you've worked that one out on your own. So we're looking for factors of 3 times 2, which is 6. So factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3. There's not very many of those, and I want it to equal 7. And so that's a positive product and a positive sum, so both of my factors are positive. And so 1 plus 6 is 7, so it's that one. So I have 6 in the x, 7 at the bottom. 1, 6, I'm dividing by 3. All right, so it's going to be 3x plus 1 and x plus 2 is your factored one. All right. All right, so those are all the examples. Not very many because A, you can go back and look at the video again. B, you've done this before, so this is just review, right? It's been a minute, but it's review. All right. And so your assignment for today is delta math again. I know you guys don't always love using delta math. I will tell you that for factoring, the examples are not super duper helpful. So if you get stuck, please come back to the video or ask Ms. Miracle for assistance because I feel very confident that she can help you with this. And so your delta math, you're going to have some factoring practice. All right. And so that's all for today. And hopefully I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great one.